going to open the meeting. If I can call it to order. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Lenox Public Schools School Committee on May 15th at 6:30 p.m. I will start by noting that this meeting is being recorded and via Zoom and will be rebroadcast on CTSB TV. My first order of business is to congratulate and welcome our new 3 members to the Lenox School Committee. Kim Winger, who is serving a 2-year term, Mike DuPont, who was elected to a 3-year term, and Kim Graham, who was elected to a 3-year term. Really pleased to have you here. Honored that you are making the commitment to this school district and to this community. It requires, as you heard in our last meeting, a lot of time, a lot of energy, but an incredible amount of reward in terms of the contributions you'll make to supporting both kids at schools and the broader community. So you've got a great set of returning members to support and guide you and be your partners. And I know there's a great set of network resources, both through MASC and through the district. So anyways, welcome aboard. So our next order of business per policy EDA is this is the school committee organizational meeting. It's really the only meeting of the year in which the superintendent opens and begins the meeting as the chair. So I, as part of reorganization, will be electing a new chair, a vice chair, and a secretary. So I'm going to open the meeting by asking for nominations for the position of Lenox School Committee Chair.
I'd like to nominate Veronica Fenn, the position of Lenox Public School Committee Chair.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All right, so I will now take additional nominations for the role of chair, if there are any.
Is it appropriate to have discussion before we vote?
We will.
Okay.
Yeah. So if there are no additional nominations, we'll close the nomination part of the process, and I will open the floor for comments. Obviously, the first thing we would want is for Veronica to accept the nomination.
I would.
But then we will obviously take any comments from the floor.
I would greatly accept the nomination. Thank you.
All right, so I'll open the floor to any comments, feedback, questions.
Well, I just thought it'd be useful for us to discuss briefly what we are looking for as a committee. And our expectations for the position. We've had, I think Bob, I don't know if any of us was here at a time when Bob was not. I guess Ronnie was probably in a prior term. But I think Bob sort of had a very distinctive and I would say effective way of leading the committee. He sort of, I think, made a point of stepping back from deliberations almost entirely. He was a fount of information, and so knew more than almost all of us about almost everything. And I think that was incredibly valuable, but usually kept his own counsel. And I remember I was quite surprised initially he wouldn't vote if it was a contested question unless he was the tiebreaker, which is sort of the convention under Robert's rules, for instance. And so I think that's a very desirable thing to have in the role of a chair, to ensure that the discussions proceed in a way that everybody's comfortable with and as sort of expeditiously as possible as well. And so that was just sort of something I thought it was worth kind of discussing as we kick off. But didn't know if others had any views or preferences, or Ronnie, if you had thoughts about it as well.
I do have thoughts about it, but I want to wait and see if anybody else has a comment.
I think given the size of our community, I think that Bob ran a meeting that really welcomed everyone. Everyone really felt heard, and there are ways to our meetings. you can run them very, very tightly. Or you can run them in a way where participants feel as though they're being heard at the appropriate part of the meeting, and I would agree with Warren that Bob had a very distinctive style that I think served the community well.
Additional comments or thoughts?
I could just, because Warren was asking me specifically, and I did have from the first 6 years I served, and then in recent Bob came on and was not chair when I finished at 6 years, and I served under a number of different chairs, some of whom had been in that position for a very long time, and everybody had different styles. So it is interesting to think of that, and in thinking about whether or not I would welcome the nomination for chair, I want to just reiterate that thank you for nominating me, and that I do recognize that we are 7 people, and that we are all a body of people that bring really great diverse experiences and thoughts. And it's important that we feel like we have a chance to be heard, and the community has a chance to be heard. And that's something that I really hold dear and will honor. I differ a little bit in Warren's recitation about Robert's Rules of Order, saying that the chair doesn't give opinions or vote. However, I do think that, I think it's helpful to hold back and wait, but we have a lot of important discussions and opinions to express, and there are 7 of us, and we're all here. Robert's Rules of Order specifically says actually that for bodies that are less than 12 members, everybody is expected to be equal members. And having said that, the role of the chair is to make sure that important issues get in front of the body so that we can exercise our rights to have conversations, not just rights, but our opportunities to really give that full, robust conversation. So I thank you for that. And I know we still have a vote to go, but I agree, David, and thank you that for the opportunity for everybody to be heard and feel like we're welcomed, and that this is a community conversation, even when it's difficult. And we've had some of those very difficult conversations, is something that I do hold truly dear. And I think I've said in meetings before that we have an opportunity to be seen by our students, by our community as leaders, and we want to model for them what we want to see them learning as they become young citizens. So it's something I really find extremely important, and love the opportunity for students to participate. It's kind of my favorite part. And I hope we have opportunities to do that.
Any other comments, thoughts? Okay, with that said, we'll close that portion and we will take a roll call vote. Mr. Cass.
Warren Cass, aye.
Ms. Winger.
Kim Winger, aye.
Mr. Dupont.
Michael Dupont, aye.
Ms. Kirby.
Megan Kirby, aye.
Ms. Benton.
Veronica Benton, aye.
Ms. Graham.
Kim Graham, aye.
And Mr. Rimler.
Dave Rimler, aye.
So with that, we have.
And now I have to do,
Some committee and you are in charge.
now I actually have to do the thing, right? Okay. But thank you all, and I'm really looking forward to a wonderful year with a lot of new leadership, and thank you. For those of you who take your time to come to our meetings or to participate remotely, the remote thing we're still doing, and it gives many people an opportunity to see what's happening and to participate without having to get these or other events. So public comment, do we have any visitors that would like to speak?
We have to do the other officer positions.
Yeah.
We do have to do that.
You need to
Thank
chair and
you.
secretary.
I'm jumping ahead to the next part. I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. All right, I can do this. Okay, so being now the new chair, I would like to invite nominations for vice chair to, not me, for vice chair to. Any nominations for vice chair? As a member, I would like to nominate Megan Kirby as vice chair.
Second.
We have any other nominations to put forward for vice chair? Any discussion? Hearing none, if we would like to have a roll call vote. Mr. Warren Cass.
Cass, aye.
Kim Winger. Kim Winger, aye.
Michael Dupont,
Aye, sorry.
Megan Kirby, aye.
Veronica Benton, aye.
Kim Graham, aye.
David Rimler, aye.
Okay, Next, we have to nominate a secretary and, so do we have any nominations on the floor for secretary?
Is it appropriate to ask a question? Of
course, yes.
I'm just being the newbie, what is the role of the secretary of the school committee?
It's a very good question.
Thank you.
So often it is the role of the secretary to write the minutes. We have the wonderful benefit of Ms. Amy Novitsky, who helps us with that, but the secretary would step in and or review the minutes if there was a question for that. And on occasion, we do have situations where we need the three, but the chair, the vice chair, and the secretary are considered like the officers. So if we have a reason why we need a smaller group to deliver, we typically do not do that, or to act in some official capacity, the secretary assists for that. We pretty much have not really needed to do that much, but it does give us an opportunity to include leadership. We want to get more familiar with how the board works. And of course, as I said, we need someone to take minutes. to do that.
As it's saying, I would nominate you. if you're-
What's that?
Saying the record won't get any, I'm just you.
No, I have not.
I actually would like to nominate Mike Dupont as clerk.
I would second that. Would you want? Do
I'd welcome that. Sure.
we have any other nominations for secretary? For clerk? Secretary is what we call it. Okay, I'm hearing none. I'm going to do the roll call vote for this way. Mr. Rivera?
David Rimler, aye.
Grandma.
Veronica Pettit, aye.
Megan Kirby, I.
Michael Dupont, aye.
Kim Winger, aye.
Gas, aye.
Thank you. Okay, now do I get to have my first official redo? All right, now the next item on our agenda is, do we have any visitors that would like to be heard? Anything on our Zoom?
No hand.
Do you see that? Okay.
I just saw it there.
Okay, moving along. So I'm not aware of any correspondence that needs to be read today, so the next order of business is to approve the minutes from the April 24th meeting. The 4 members who we could all vote, but the understanding with 3 members who were not present, that likely that you would choose to abstain. So we have a motion to approve the minutes of April 24th.
I move to approve the minutes for April 24th.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? You want to, those of you that are new, do you want to abstain because you weren't there? Sure. Okay. All right, so we'll now turn it over to you, the superintendent's report.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you.
Chair. So again, want to just really welcome the new members and congratulate new board leadership. Appreciate that you have stepped up, are modeling what it means to be an engaged and contributing member of the community for our students. And I again argue that the work you're doing in this board, in this room, is foundational. It's foundational work for any community, incredibly important. So as someone who actually sits on the school committee, I can appreciate the amount of time and energy that you have and will put into this work. And again, thanks to all our returning members. I want to thank the town of Lenox for successfully supporting the fiscal year 24 budget. It was a pleasure to be in attendance at the town meeting with a capacity crowd. I appreciate the middle and high school and all the folks who supported the behind the scenes logistics to get the meeting on board. We had a partnership with the LYA to support childcare for individuals who want to bring their kids and ensure they had access. So really appreciate all the effort that went into that. But most importantly, we've been talking about the budget for months now, and I'm so thankful for the residents of town of Lenox and endorsing the work that we do. Every week I get memos from our 2 principals, and I am just continue to be kind of blown away at the amount of testing we do. So I appreciate all the effort that continues to go into all the structure and setup for the immense amount of testing we have to do across the grade spans, across content areas, in both of the schools, and really want to thank the staff who I know work behind the scenes to organize space and proctors and but also really want to again thank our families and our students for really working hard for showing up and taking this incredibly seriously. Appreciate that. We're almost there, I think, right? Are we? I was pleased to get Principal Ames's memo this week on all the amazing success that our spring sports teams are having. Just incredible work. We're really happy to have Hutchinson here, and I know he's had a conflict in the last couple of meetings with the lacrosse team, who's having a tremendous season. As you were just mentioning, is ranked in the state, and so as our teams individually head into the tournament this weekend, we really do commend them, congratulate them. Win or lose, we really appreciate the time and energy and sweat you're putting into representing your school and this community. We appreciate that. We also have an incredible amount of activity. I provided in your packet today a link to end of year event. I had prepared that memo for the school committee a couple of meetings ago, but I thought it'd be good for the new members to also have access to that memo. Just so you can see some of the things that are occurring, and you might have an opportunity to plug in to some of those events. But I know we've got the prom coming up tomorrow night. There's National Honor Society induction and a large art show at the middle and high school. So again, really want to commend our students and really encourage everyone both to celebrate successes at the end of the year, but also to act in an incredibly safe and responsible way as we navigate what I refer to as prom season. Having supported 5 of my own children in a bunch of high schools through prom season, it's one of the more anxiety producing times of the year for us because we want kids to have fun, but we really want them to be safe. So we appreciate both parents and students watching out for each other and enjoying this really exciting time of the year. I want to call out our special Olympians who last week participated in Special Olympics at Monument Mountain. It's a great event. It had to be postponed for a week in a week of rain, but last week the kids had a great day at the Monument track and great weather, and I know it was a tremendous event. I was at Morris when we welcomed back our Olympians, and they were incredibly, they were being cheered by their peers. It was a really exciting event for all, very uplifting. I would encourage you, without giving it away, to tune in on June 24th to As Schools Match Wits. We've had a very strong team. We've been representing the strength of that team and their success throughout the season, and this will be an episode worth watching. We'll leave it at that. But I do congratulate the students who have worked really hard and again have represented our schools, whether win or lose, in a really positive and incredibly productive way. Past week, I met with a group who represents the scholarship advisory team group. Amy,
Scholarship committee.
scholarship committee, thank you. Amy sets all this stuff for me, and then she says, just go sit in that chair over there. But it's really great to meet the people who form that committee. Jim Hurley is the chair, and it's really a dedicated group of folks who carefully look at our senior applications and also our post-grad applications. And these students write essays, which are just incredibly moving and incredibly, just impressive. They're articulate. They communicate effectively, and they really make compelling arguments. Unfortunately, we have to just make decisions, and Jim Hurley and the committee do the heavy lifting of identifying students and distributing funds that we hope will help as they transition to college. But I do appreciate the participation of that group, but also the generosity of that group, both in terms of time and actual real dollars that they contribute to these scholarships. So thanks to all. I was pleased to get an email from Dave Pugh, our VP at the middle high school, encouraging folks to eat outside in the new gazebo. Is that what we're calling it? Yes. It looks great, but a few months ago, we brought you a proposal. Alex Del Vecchio brought you a proposal That feature is now constructed. It's got a nice little table in the middle, and it was really great to see some folks utilizing that as a positive way to enjoy the lunch period. So congratulations to Alex and to the school. We are hot in hiring in HR season. We just had a meeting with the HR subcommittee, and I reported to them that I feel really good about the hiring that we're doing. We got out ahead of this early. The principals are right on it, and we're bringing in some really quality people to the district. So probably no more important thing than we do than hiring high quality teachers and staff. And I'm very optimistic about the folks that we're bringing in the coming year. So as we finish up hiring, I'm sure that Dr. Collins will have an update for you on the final hiring and staffing tally, probably sometime in July when that's all completed. I also provided in the packet today just a quick memo that I provided to the members earlier about summer programming, just again for the benefit of the new members, knowing what we're going to be working on this summer. And then I have also just want to give you an update on just working groups that we're closing out on. Again, one of the things we did today in HR was to just talk about some of the transition work we're doing to prepare for Dr. Collins, who will be here in a couple of weeks, including our professional development committee, mentoring and induction group led by Ms. Wells and Ms. Kelly, sorry. And of course, we go way back, don't we? So no one knows that except for me, right? That's a way back machine, isn't it? And the well.
Pretty sure my cell phone still comes up that way.
Does it?
Yeah. my phone.
Whenever you call me, it comes up that way. So thanks for that. In your packet, I also provided an enrollment memo. I don't know if you want to turn to it real quickly, but I thought it would be important just to give you all a snapshot of where we stand for enrollment at this moment in time. And in this memo, I also have linked to the choice grid that Amy maintains. She does such a nice job of that. But we're looking very solid in terms of enrollment, total enrollment projected for next year is 785, and that's really without all our final registrations, which will occur between now and the end of August. And the current enrollment is 789. So we're within 4 students, even without the impending enrollments that we anticipate. Sitting in the neighborhood of below 40% choice overall, and then you can see sort of the detail work by school. I will point out that we have almost 100 students currently on the choice wait list. So again, there still continues to be high demand for choice into the Lenox Public Schools, which I think hopefully speaks to you all about how folks perceive the quality of what happens here in the school system. So anyways, if you have any questions, I also for the newer members linked to some older choice memos if you're interested in sort of going back and looking at some of the earlier work that happened. But I'm glad to entertain any questions you may have about enrollment if you have any. And if not, we can move on. I wanted to ask Ms. Kelly to provide an overview of the Morris sensory path project, which does require a vote. There were materials provided in the backup, and if you can give us an overview, and then we can have a motion. Madam Chair.
Sure. So teacher and parent, Sean Kennedy, as a staff member, came to me in the fall about a sensory path. And a sensory path is guided movements that are set up throughout the building to help students engage their gross motor skills as they're walking through the hallways. It is also a great tool to use if students are having some strong emotions. It helps them become regulated. So as staff member and parent, Mr. Kennedy hosted 3 paint and mingles at Morris Elementary School to raise funding for the sensory path, and he did an awesome job and raised $1,800. So the PTO is now donating that money to Morris to install the sensory path right before school opens in the fall. We have contacted, in the school committee link is the company that we are purchasing the sensory path from. I also believe I linked the path that we are purchasing. It's just the original path with a couple add-ons. And I have a group of staff members who are volunteering to come install the path in August. And then our custodians will finish up the cleaning of the building and the waxing of the floor, because some of the path needs to go on the floor and on the walls. So I'd really like your approval. Any questions?
Where are you gonna put it?
So it's gonna be in a few different places within the building. So in the first grade hallway, in the main hallway near the cafeteria is gonna be one spot. Then the alcove where the elevator is will be another area for an add-on. And then we were thinking in the upper grades in the 4th and 5th grade in that other alcove down there. So it'll be in a couple different spots throughout the building.
So just for reference, if you haven't figured it out by now, the school committee approved donations. And one of the reasons you approve donations, you want to make sure the donation aligned with the goals and aims of the district, and that also we're not taking on equipment that would be antiquated and cost us more money. So that's why you're approving this tonight. With that, I'll hand it back
Yeah.
to the chair.
Well, just really in the sense of also, you're not asking us actually for money, so. Thank you to the parents and participants in the fundraising efforts to do this, and everybody, we already opened up the floor to questions, and you guys have any questions?
I'd like to just make a motion to accept the PTO donation for the Morris sensory path.
I'll second.
Any other discussion or question?
Any empirical data on effectiveness of it?
In my previous school, I had a sensory room, and it helps students who struggled with certain emotions. It was to help students with attentional issues. I can tell you just my firsthand on experience, it was very successful.
Will the putting it in the public area in any way affect the efficacy of it? With perhaps other students?
Just like anything, we'll instruct the students how to use it and then reinforce it.
Want to vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it, thank you, I'm excited.
So the next order of business is another function that the school committee plays is you all approve the body overnight trips. And so we have a request from the middle high school, grade 17, for an overnight trip in November. And I've asked grade 7, sorry. I've asked Principal Ames to just give us an overview.
I'm gonna immediately defer to my rock stars from here, middle school, who have far greater detail.
Thanks.
knowledge.
Could you just do us one favor? Could you, for people who are speaking, you can come to the front chair. We've had a little trouble with the sound. We want to make sure everyone doesn't miss a word.
Well, thank you for setting time aside for us. My name is Mary Sorrentino. I'm the grade 17 leader and also grade 7 math teacher. With me is Kelly Katie. She is currently 6th grade social studies teacher. So we're here today to request approval for a trip to Nature's Classroom, which we would take in November of 2023. So we take the current 6th grade when they're in 7th grade. The goal of Nature's Classroom, I want to tell you a little bit about Nature's Classroom, and then I'd like, I thought it would be nice if Kelly told you a little bit about her work with the 6th graders, in hopes that we can see a blend of why the trip would be effective for the group that we're So Nature's Classroom is a 2-night, 3-day trip. And the goal of it is to create a living, learning environment. We asked to take this trip in November 1st through 3rd. And the site we've chosen is just in Great Barrington at Camp Eisner. So the goal of the way the program works is it combines academic experiences with social, emotional, or social development. And so the kids come together as a community through different activities, some of which they choose and some of which they're assigned to. So in terms of the academic portion, the day is broken up into 3 sections. And the first section involves field groups. And these are assigned groups of small groups, about 10 kids. They meet together every day. And this is where they go on hikes, explore nature, but really participate in team building activities. Later in the day, they also have class choices. So these again are arranged in very small groups of students where they get to explore their own interests. So these activities range from anything from wilderness survival to animal tracking, field journaling, water science experiments. Really, it's a time for them to dig deep into their own interests. And then lastly, there's an evening program where the entire group comes together. And at that point, we do things like science fair, skits, old-fashioned sing-along, outdoor night experiences. In between, the whole group comes together as for meals. So they get breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They also have some free time along the way in between their events where they can either be outside, just playing really, or they can be in their cabins. All events are supervised with staff from our school as well as counselors through Nature's Classroom. Most of the events are science oriented. However, many combine with math, art, history, English, and of course, social emotional skill building. So I'd like you to talk a little bit about.
I've had the opportunity to work with the 6th grade this year as a social studies teacher. And this was, I believe, the 6th grade team we'd all be unanimous in saying was the first year that we got a group of kids that we really noticed the effects of COVID. We expected it last year but it was really this year. And it, along with the transition into the middle school, just kind of combined together. And so during enrichment class this year, which is my last period, instead of always doing social studies enrichment, I really take that opportunity to engage with the adjustment counselor, Rachel Meswar, and do social emotional learning. So we tackle different programs. She comes in and does monthly lessons, and we focused on like empathy, perseverance, coping techniques, stress management, and the kids really seem so engaged and into the lessons. They really loved it, but I'm not so sure they're applying it when they leave us. And Nature's Classroom gives them that opportunity to put those skills into real life experiences, because Nature's Classroom is also teaching them that, but in a very different way, like really fun ways, in ways that they wouldn't even know they're being taught that. Like, I was just thinking of mealtime, where kids sign up to go set the tables. And then there's other kids that are the servers for the day, where they take it from the cafeteria and just put it on the trays. There's other kids that they do the cleaning up, and then they measure the food that was wasted at the end of the meal. And their goal is to kind of cut down on waste as the week goes on, they call that the board report. And the kids all sing the song, and it's really just gives them team building, working together to accomplish something successful. And they get to do it in a real life experience outside of a traditional classroom setting. And we took a class, our current sophomore class was the last class that had the opportunity to do that. And I always credit with, that was the year we went to COVID, that if we didn't do that in the fall of that year, I'm not so sure we could have stayed connected with those kids during that school immediately shutting down, us going home and saying, hey, would you mind joining us online? They all did that year. And I think it's because we established relationships. And so I'd like to get that connection back to the kids. And what another thing I really love about Nature's Classroom is there's no electronics allowed. None, not even their cell phones. So it's just a chance to disconnect. We have, if there's an emergency, we have our cell phones. If parents like need to talk to their child, we have them and give those numbers out to parents so they can get in contact, but it's not that scrolling and seeing what everybody's doing. And so I really think that's the huge benefit for that. And we get to bond with them outside of our classroom. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions? Any questions about Nature's Classroom? Okay. This is for those who are new, this is a typical form that when if there is a requirement for a field trip that we have to approve. Our faculty and staff typically provide us with the information based on this form, and then additional information this is provided here. Thank you for that. And I do have a question about the cost we're putting on here. Is that something that we have in our budget for next year to pay for ourselves, or we're asking friends to pay for it?
The cost right now is $280 per student. We'd be asking families for that. We're hoping to use middle school field trip money for the buses, so that should be covered. So the $280 would cover everything: their stay, their meals, transportation back and forth,
And a 24-hour nurse.
yeah.
To go on for emergencies or to administer medications, because we can't administer medication.
I'm curious, is there any type of funding for those students who cannot afford it? Is there any type of a line item for that, or where does that come from? That's a lot of money for some people. So I was just curious, is there some type of a fund where we could go to if we have a student? Because like you said, the goal is to build a team and everybody, and I'd hate to see somebody not go because of the funding. So is there money available?
Sure. Well, in this case, we already have enough for 3 scholarships set aside from teacher donations to cover 3 students. We also have the Walker Fund that we utilized in the past. Last time we went, the Walker Fund was able to get us 8 scholarships, and that was all that was requested. Between the Walker Fund and teachers coming forward and saying, we don't want to leave anyone behind, we'll cover that cost. So we did that. And we were thinking about holding a raffle in the fall, a small fundraiser to try to get another 1 or 2. We won't know until, unfortunately, send out the paperwork, and then we have a scholarship request form. So we won't know the exact number until those forms come back.
It makes no sense.
No sense.
And
I mean, I should put that, I'm a current 6th grade teacher. I sort of have a sense, but I wouldn't want to speak for those families.
And that's why you feel like it would be covered.
Yeah, I'm that
That's
decision, yes.
and the dates, I just haven't looked back at the calendar, the first or the third, those are school days, so that will be. So if students, for whatever reason, choose not to go, those students will be in school for the day.
Yes, we try to leave an alternative curriculum for them, so that would give them the Nature's Classroom experience, but inside of a classroom, opposed to being out in nature. So we try to do some fun experiments, get left behind, so more interactive social studies activities and math activities.
Problem solving, engineering sort of activities. So we run a modified schedule.
We voting on this because it's overnight.
Yes, yes, we would typically vote on this, because it is, yes, this is overnight, because in the past, it's also been out of state, but this time I can see that it's local, so. Don't have as much of a distance, et cetera. Just for those who aren't familiar with the Walker Fund, long-term principal of LMMHS, Dr. Walker, when he retired, people wanted to create an opportunity to honor him, we didn't want gifts or anything, so we decided to create a fund to help support students who need additional financial support for field trips or other important events, and it's something that has had some. We would like to advertise some more to have people contribute when they'd like to. Some people might choose to pay for their student plus another, or their student plus a donation, and at times there's been a form that has said, if you like to add to the Walker Fund, when you sign up for your child, you can do that. And I believe that that's often used in a way that the principal has control and support, so faculty can discreetly come and say, I recognize there's a student need. And it's something that we try to make available when there's a student need. Also, we did have discussions during the budget this past year, so we'll have a new budget next year and have discussions about which types of trips we fund fully or which type of trips we seek to pass that on to students. And that may be an ongoing conversation, but for this one, the budget for the year next year, this is not included in that budget. We did have some allocation where we added some allocation, so it wasn't in that.
Right.
Okay.
So Madam Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we approve Nature's Classroom field trip request.
Second.
Any further discussion or further questions? Would like to take a vote, all those in favor?
Aye.
And all those opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here, appreciate it, yeah, thank you. And my last order of business on the superintendent's report is I have asked Dr. Ames, Principal Ames, to be present tonight to give you all a brief overview regarding the hate bias incident that you're all well aware of now that occurred at the middle of high school weeks ago. We've obviously put out two broad public messages to the entire school community. In addition to that, there's been a lot of work happening at the school level and behind the scenes. I think generally we're all troubled by this event. It certainly is not something that we accept or that we will tolerate. But I'm also reminded of the words of my mentor from UMass, David Schimmel, who was a longstanding law instructor there, who often said to me, no school and district is immune. And so we will and will always have to grapple with the complex issues and challenging situations that arise in our school. What I believe is that the only way you tackle these issues is to hit them head on. You got to face them, you got to be honest about them, you got to put them in the public square, you got to discuss them. And I think in partnership with a level of honesty and over communication, you can move these issues. So I do believe that we've been very straightforward about what's occurred, I guess, which leads to my final point, which is the positive part, which is I've been incredibly encouraged by the level of engagement we've had with our partners, both within the schools, the staff, the students, our community partners, our partners who represent particular communities within Lenox and the Berkshires. And I'm really optimistic and encouraged by the feedback and the proactive counsel and support that we received from these groups. As I say, the work's never done. It's challenging, upsetting, but I think if we come together and we continue to tackle these issues, you can get to a place where you're proud, you continue to be proud of your district, and it is a place where individuals are truly valued. They can contribute in meaningful ways, and you have a strong sense of connectivity and belonging, and that is really what we strive for. So with that said, I'm going to ask Dr. Ames just to give you a brief overview. I know that we've shared this broadly with the school and the broader community. There's been articles written about it, but it also warrants, I think, some airtime here at our school committee meeting. So if you don't mind, you come up so folks will hear you.
Thank you, Dr. Everyone. So, pardon me. My comments are largely a reflection of other written communications we've sent out. And I recognize that I'm speaking specifically to people who might be attending remotely, who didn't receive the messages from the school via school messenger system. So if you've heard this before, bear with me, but I really kind of wanted to stay on message and be sure that what we're saying is consistent and clear to everyone. And at the end of this, I'm happy to answer questions you might have or add to some comments. A lot of people in the room have been a part of this process and have something to add and telling the story where we are today. Last week, we came together as a community to respond to graffiti that was found in late April. The graffiti included a swastika, a student's name, and an LGBTQ slur. It was first noticed on April 28th on a stall wall in the boys' bathroom. Our response has been a collaborative effort in coordination with the Anti-Defamation League, the Jewish Federation of Berkshires, Evra of Southern Berkshire, Berkshire County District Attorney's Office, and the Lenox Police Department. In partnership with these organizations, we developed a three-pronged approach. First, we will continue to investigate and attempt to identify the individual or individuals who scratched these symbols and words on the bathroom wall. Second, we will engage with our student population to ensure they recognize these symbols of hate and bias, that they understand what they mean and represent, and that they're comfortable and confident in reporting these incidents if and when they appear in the school. Third, we will strive to ensure that students who are harmed or threatened by these symbols have access to trusted adults, peers, and other resources so that they feel safe and know that they have allies at LMMHS. Last week, we met as a faculty, school council, and in several student assemblies on Friday morning to discuss what happened and how we would move forward as a community. In the student assemblies, it was clearly explained to students what had happened and why these words and images are so harmful to both individuals and our collective community. Following the assemblies, students returned to classes where they engaged in conversations surrounding what it means to be an ally or an upstander, and how to recognize and report incidents of both hate and bias. Since the images were discovered, guidance counselors and school adjustment counselors have made themselves available to meet with students and faculty members as needed. LMMHS has been working toward a more inclusive community for a while now in several important ways. The schools work with A World of Difference and No Place for Hate, both research-based initiatives from the Anti-Defamation League that help students understand and combat hate and bias-based behavior. Over the summer, we will develop and roll out training for teachers at both Morris Elementary and LMHS, designed to bolster our faculty's ability to recognize, report, and respond to this behavior. Our investigation into who created these images is ongoing. We have met with and questioned every single individual who was recorded entering that bathroom the day the graffiti was discovered. We have met with students, coaches, and parents who might have seen or heard something about the images. Our investigation is led by Officer Colvin of the Lenox Police Department and supported by the Berkshire County District Attorney's Office. But that's a summary of where we are. And again, that's largely a synthesis of two of the written communications we've sent out. In addition to that, those formal communications, I have had many conversations with local stakeholders, and just to echo Dr. Everline's point, I have been truly overwhelmed by the support we received from local groups, concerned individuals, but also coalitions that come together in support of our community and our schools. It has been powerful. I'd like to answer questions some of you may have in the best way I can about where we are and what we've done and what might be next. Maybe I could just use this forum and talking to some parents who might be checking in. I've heard from quite a few of you, and that's a wonderful thing. If you know anything about this, please feel free to reach out to me via email or by phone. But I'm also really encouraging families to talk with their students about the assemblies we had on Friday, and the discussions in class that followed. I've heard from some of you already. It's been really interesting what your students' takeaways were. But again, reach out to me if you have some information about this, or if you have concerns about the way we're addressing it. And please, make an effort to talk to your students about the discussions we had last Friday.
Thank you.
If I could just ask, sorry, you did mention the summary of what's happened and what you said, or asking what will be happening in the future. If you can just elaborate a little bit more on how we're engaging, because obviously this was a pretty specific incident, but we have in this body discussed issues of other children, and people have been harmed by bullying behaviors and harmful behaviors and hurtful behaviors from other students. So if you can kind of expand it into, we responded to this incident in a very public way, but we have a lot of other work to do, and I believe that we've talked about as a body.
Yeah, I think tactically, our next move, so to speak, is working on some training over the summer. We're meeting with Phil Fogelman next week, I believe, in admin in the Anti-Defamation League to help us talk about programs they have in place and stuff they might be able to help us develop. And I'm here speaking really on behalf of Principal Kelly as well, because whatever we subscribe to, whatever we welcome into the district, will take place down at Morris as well as LMHS. This does not start in the 6th grade. So we have that work will happen in conjunction with our professional development committee, who's starting to think about how we're going to use our time beginning at convocation in August when faculty return. So we're hoping to have some pieces in place that really make faculty feel better about identifying bias-based incidents and images, reporting them to faculty, excuse me, and developing in them a better understanding of what we do with that information. What we've heard from faculty and talking about this is people are not likely to report or bring to our attention things that they feel might not really be scrutinized. So we want to be sure there's a level of trust among our faculty that they feel like we're going to do our very best to use the resources and access we have to address these issues when they come up, but also just to engage in some conversations about what is a hate-based incident, what is bias-based wording, what are the kinds of things we see. It's not always as horrific and as doesn't draw your attention the way some really graphic imagery might on a bathroom wall. Often it's more nuanced, it's more subtle, it can take place over time. And we want to really bolster our ability to identify that so that we can address it in school.
I think we've talked a little bit on the TLC committee about talking about ways to engage families and communities and students more in conversations about building community and building the ability to communicate with each other and learn how to treat each other better. And there's a lot of conversation that will probably be put on in our subcommittees as we go forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So next,
We are all set. Unfinished business. I'd like to make a couple comments at the end of the meeting.
sure. And so we are looking at the issue of the school committee meetings, and so we typically get a lot of help from Amy Novitsky, thank you, in trying to lay out a year that focuses on meetings that are set up to help guide us through the various aspects of work that we have to do. So we don't really have to put a vote on this, I don't believe. I think we just have to see if anybody has any changes, and we can certainly reach out if you find that this is gonna really interfere with a pre-planned trip or something where you can't make the meeting. Let me know and we can change it unless anybody has anything they want to request right now. Otherwise, we do try to publish them well in advance for planning purposes. I think there is also the possibility of a discussion, we'll wait till Dr. Collins gets here, about any additional meetings we might have over the summer, if we wanted to do any training or work with him to get us ready for his onboarding, and we would just feel like it doesn't make much sense to try to throw out dates until he gets here. We talked about what that might be for. So if anybody has any questions or comments, or you can reach out to me and we can talk about if we need to change something.
I wanted to make one suggestion, which is just looking at the sort of retreat. I think typically, I already know I won't be there in town on that date. I think typically we've struggled to schedule late summer retreat dates and push them into September. But conversely, I think especially with a number of new members joining the committee and Dr. Collins joining us at the start of next month, it might make sense to try to schedule a retreat in June instead. I think to your point, we don't necessarily know his availability. I suspect he will be around
Yes.
for the most part in June.
Yes.
And so, we might want to take offline, is there a date when it works for everybody? But wanted to at least put out the thought, also so that we get a chance to know each other and work together a bit, as opposed to showing up at the end of the summer fresh.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, so I'll send out some type of a poll about it, but also we'll find a time to meet with Dr. Collins and comes on board, just think about how, if he has some ideas also about how they like to structure that. I agree that there's the opportunity to get to know one another, to do some training. There is the charting the course training that the Mass Association of School Committees offers, and that's a good kind of entry for anybody who wants to know more about how all this works. We do ask everybody to take that course. And I'll send out a link to those dates and coordinate with the
September 23rd at.
Is that the first one, September? Maybe it's the first December.
Around here it is.
Yeah, so they do it regionally and some of it's different times. I think there at least used to be some opportunities to also enroll to take it online. It's nice to network and meet some other people who are new school committee members. And then beyond that, we also, there's the opportunity to go to the MASC training, which is on Cape Cod in the first week of November. And I'll send out some information about that if anybody wants to go to that. I found it at different times more or less useful. The last training last year I thought was very useful and helpful, especially when we're trying to look at things that are happening across the state with initiatives and or issues that schools are dealing with, that we don't feel like we have some context of what's happening in Lenox in comparison to what's happening regionally and in our state. And we get an opportunity to really network with other members as well as hear a lot of really important information, take some good workshops. So if people really want to do that, that's we can enroll in that. And we can coordinate that through Amy and me too. Yeah, so I think we'll send out something on that. And so we have our new business, and I will turn this over to Megan Kirby, who has been on the governance leadership committee. You would like to take that on, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you. So I did provide printed out versions. I wouldn't normally do this just because it's so paper heavy, but I figured it would be good if we wanted to review it for the new members. Kind of in detail. So this is an ongoing project that we've been doing with Liz LaFond, who was our MASC contact coordinator, whatever you want to call it. She's a wealth of knowledge, fantastic. We've made it through quite a few of these policy renewals. I think I don't know how many we've gotten to, but a lot.
Yeah.
So today I come to you with sections H, K, and I of our policy book. And in the past, we've kind of just had a brief conversation. I do have notes as to whatever changes were made. Just know that most of these changes are minor. It's, I can definitely go through it bullet by bullet if you think that's appropriate, or kind of just summarize the entire policy as a change.
So because we have new members, it makes it a little bit different, but a year ago, we engaged with MASC to do a complete review. Because many of our policies had unclear dates about when they were enacted, they were missing updated information, rather than kind of cob job it, take it piece by piece, we felt it was important to do a thorough review. From that, though, in the next coming year, we're going to be looking to pinpoint a couple of policies where we feel like they need a deeper dive, such as our mission statement or anything that we really feel like we have to go back in and think about whether we need to change this. So much of this is either legally recommended, standard policy, something that we have that like we don't even actually really know why we have it, and the subcommittee's been working diligently on it. So you have 3 members of the school committee, which included Bob Vaughn and Christine Morrow, who went through a lot of that diligently. So obviously, if you have questions, and some of you just got these. What we had decided to do was it's your vote, but to approve them and then think about whether we want to bring any policy forward for a deeper dive in coming meetings. It's not like you say, oh, well, we approved that, so now I'm foreclosed forever and a day of bringing it up. But it does bring us to a place where like, okay, these have been updated, recommended language changes, including updated of some people, such as investigators or people that have to be there, identified as resources within the district. And we get that to that baseline, and then we'll begin to dig into some of the things that are more substantive.
Sure, so I'll start with section A and I'm sorry, H, and kind of just go through the minor changes. Section H is about negotiations. See, we have some part HA, negotiation goals. There are some minor language changes, example, students instead of young people. So again, it's a lot of just outdated language, and we're adopting MASC's language for that. Otherwise, no changes there. HP, negotiations, legal status. We removed, basically a copy and paste of the actual law. MASC recommends that we just reference the law. So we went ahead and did that and adopted the rest of the MASC language for clarity purposes. It was a little bit detailed and really kind of hard to understand. So the language is much more concise at this point. Moving on to HF, school committee negotiating agents. Again, adopted MASC language for clarity, and we added a note under executive session after number 1, bullet C. Any questions on section H?
Entertain a motion to approve section 8, H, excuse me.
Can I ask one question just in general?
Yeah, of course.
I missed the first, or I missed the meeting when we sort of did the other section. So I just had a couple of questions. And I don't mean to interfere with the process, but are these, the format of these, is it primarily what is on the MASC website? And because they look like our format. Did we follow our format?
We followed our format, yep. And so when I say we adopted MASC language, it just means that that is as of, 2023, this is what they have changed their sections to, as kind of like a template or format, but we remained, in our formatting.
And one other comment, I have been involved with looking through these and revising them and updating them over time. And had there been any discussion of perhaps, and what we found really helpful, we were often confused about when was the last time anyone had looked at it, when had it been revised. Had there been, and there was from time to time a notation on the bottom of the policy. Have there been any discussion about having these date marks of, when they are dated as adoption, as by, or are we just going to adopt it as of a certain date and then as we revise it, update, put a date in it?
Sure.
Any discussion?
Yep, there will be a revision date as soon as we can get through as possible. So hopefully they will all be 2023, fingers crossed.
So that, will that be on each individual policy, or will it be for the policy book in general?
It'll be at the bottom of each policy.
I would imagine the bottom of each policy. So this is just a rough draft of a clean copy, if that makes sense, with our edits.
Okay, great. So with that, I'd like to make a motion that we accept section H policy.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on Justin?
I mean, you did say we will be able to go back and revisit things at a later date and time, so, yeah.
And we will reconstitute, that will be the last part of our agenda, we'll be asking people what committees they'd like to be on, and so for people who really are, would like to be interested in the governance and leadership committee, that generally does a lot of policy review or other things that fall under governance and leadership. Doesn't mean that's the only group, because teaching, learning, and culture, which is our TLC committee, also might decide to take up a particular policy. And this is the policy of us at the school committee. There's also the handbook and other policies that happen sort of in how, that for age appropriate for the students. And we sometimes have input in that as well, but those policies come from, our policies. So it's not like, oh, if I'm not in the governance leadership, I can't recommend a change to a policy. If another committee decides that they think it's appropriate, say, we want to take up this policy, we want to look at it, we want to make recommend changes, and that would be come to this board and we would vote. So it's not I voted that day and now I can't, there's plenty of opportunity to discuss but getting the recommendation from MASC has been very helpful because there's a lot of cross-referencing the legal requirements. There are some policies, if we choose not to follow them, then we might be in violation of the law, so we do have to be careful about that. And then we have disclosures and recitations that we need to give out to the public about who they need to contact if they want an investigation or something like that, and that is also part of these policies, am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. Are we all set voting?
Any other? You want to vote for all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving on to section K, community relations, which is a little bit thicker than the first packet I handed out. But again, minor changes, and I'll just go ahead and go through which sections changes were made to. So we have KA/KBA, school community and school parent relations goals. Language only changes, again, outdated language, we replaced parents with parent/guardian. KBBA, non-custodial parents' rights, changes, adopted MASC language. It just really simplified it, again, keeping it in our own formatting. We also added reference to FERPA per MASC. That needs to be in there. So like you mentioned, MASC has done a very good job letting us know when we're missing a MGL reference or what have you. Let's see, KBE, relations with parent booster organizations, again, added legal references for MASC. Title IX was the big one here, and that is it for KBE. KCD, public gifts to schools, we added a legal reference on GL 4453A for MASC's recommendations, and there is information in that section that now covers grants and fundraising as well. KDB, public's right to know, changes adapted MASC version, which specifies what's required by public records law. That was again an MASC recommendation to become current. KDD, news, media relations and news releases, minor language changes, adopted MASC version. KE, public complaints, adopted MASC language, no other changes. And that is all I have for section K.
So if you didn't mention them, that's just, you're just including it in
Right.
there that it's up to date. And
Yeah.
Question is, I think this is at the last meeting, the recommendation to eliminate KEB and KEC, or one of them, which.
Yeah, it
I think are
was so
gone now.
KEC, kind of on our final meeting, given that I'm now subcommittee of one just for the time being. We talked to Liz LaFond and wanted to have another discussion about this, possibly in PLC. We're not really sure yet, so we're going to kind of table that for now. I'm not sure if you guys are okay with approving the remainder of them, or do you want to wait until we have an opportunity to discuss?
Oh, well, I would just be, the file that you sent doesn't have those in here, so I wasn't sure, are we voting on leaving those as is, or are we voting on removing them?
I think we need to have a discussion before we remove them. That was Liz LaFond's
Yeah,
recommendation, so.
so if that policy, which is in existence, isn't here, it means it stays as
It
is,
means it stays as is.
correct?
Correct.
So we can have a bullet, you were working on a bulleted list that says, these are things we need to go back and do.
Yes,
So therefore, there'd be no changes to it until we have the discussion, right?
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Entertain a motion to approve section K of the policy manual.
I move we accept the revisions to section K of the policy manual as prepared by the governance committee.
Second,
And is there any further discussion or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
I saved the best for last. Nell has no changes.
And we don't.
So do we need to vote on?
How liquid you can.
If you want to make it this one official, if there's really no recommended changes, perhaps we should do that so that you're dating every accurate.
Yeah.
So entertain a motion to approve section L of our policy manual, which is not asking for any changes, but is recommended as an updated version. Have a second? There was a motion from Kim Brand
Okay.
and second by Michael.
Second.
All those in favor?
And just one quick thing to add about this project, so sections G, I, and J. We are kind of putting on hold until we have Dr. Collins on board because they heavily pertain to personnel, students, and instruction. So we just didn't really feel it was appropriate to kind of jump in without his, his participation. So that'll be tabled and coming to you all as soon as possible.
And just to add for anybody in our wonderful present or school audience out there, that if these policies are available, now the new versions aren't up on the website yet, but we do put our policy manual on our website under the school committee tab. But if you have any questions or having difficulty finding that, please let us know and we'll help you navigate and so you can understand what our policies are. We are trying to make sure that these are accessible and available for people to be able to review and read, and if you have any difficulty with that, we always want to help. Okay, so now the next item, which does require a vote, is for our stipends contract addendum. I can give you a little bit of feedback about that, unless, Orin, did you wanna? You haven't worked on this one. Okay, so a little bit of history. When in past situations, we had a contract, when we have people within our buildings who are given a stipend because either they're a coach or they're a club member, advisor, or they take on other important roles that are outside of their normal salary or contract, we pay them. And in the past, we've had times when we've had kind of over the history, there've been stipended positions that are sort of all over the place. And a few years back, the contract ago, I was actually part of that negotiation. We did a lot of work with Bob Bond, was definitely steering this as one of his first act when he came on the school committee to make some sense out of it based upon learning what are the actual duties of the stipended position. So for example, a club advisor would be very different than a coach for a sport, be an example. Tutoring might be, you can see if you look at it, it's be an hourly rate. So we created a structure to be able to identify the stipended positions and also a structure to be able to give them cost of living allowances when appropriate. And it is defined in the contract. Also in the contract though, is that yearly we would look through it and identify which of the stipends we're actually doing. So I'll give you an example that I actually don't know whether this is still happening, and maybe Hutch does. Years ago, there was a student, the students really wanted to have a Quidditch team. And so they had that, because if we have an opportunity to have students wanting to do something, math club, Quidditch, Lego, engineering, or some other type of group where they felt they wanted to be able to meet, they would propose that to their leadership, and it was something that enough students were interested in, we would try to accommodate that. But over time, students want different things, especially when it comes to club advisors. This would be an area where we budget a certain amount, but perhaps the students aren't interested that year, so we don't spend the money. Certainly, if we don't have anyone doing the job, but each year we will identify what we are actually paying for as far as stipends and what the amounts are based upon the contract. So if you look through it and you see a line through it, that would be something that didn't happen and won't be paid for because there isn't someone doing that job. And that's why we do it yearly, because some years we actually are utilizing that role and other years we are not. So that is something that requires a vote on an annual basis, and it is periodically subject to negotiations with our unit, with our LEA representatives, but this is what is reflective of our contract at this point. Are there any questions about that? And when our budget is being voted on, typically it's the administration and leadership who's saying, these are the things that are actually happening, this is what we're asking for. There could be one year where it was budgeted and it didn't happen, but year to year, it's typically, we get a pretty accurate number, typically, of what that's going to look like. Yeah, if there's no questions, or at least we could open discussion with a motion to approve.
We approve the what is it, memorandum of understanding agreement for the 2023 stipends in the Unit A contract.
I'll second.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, I'll have a vote, please. All those in favor?
Aye.
The vote would be all those in favor, thank you. Any opposed? Okay, and then the next is a similar, we have our nursing staff at our schools. This is for the school position contract. We have, but they are the supervision of a position that we contract with in order to ensure that we are meeting the medical and regulatory of needs of our students, and so we need a motion to approve that contract.
And will we approve the 2023 school year school position role as presented? Is that right?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? If I can make a comment too, I believe, I'll look to Dr. Everwine for this, that there is a wellness, there has been an active wellness committee. There's some reactivation of the wellness committee right now, and I think if there are concerns about how we're handling it, there's first of all, our requirements legally of what we need to require, but also the wellness committee may be discussing whether or not we need any additional support or changes to this, but that all comes, but this is required that we have our position to supervise that staff. Okay, so our next order of business is our subcommittees, and I think you've heard me mention several times. And for our new members, we have the 5 existing subcommittees in which we try to do the week to week, month to month work on various aspects of our work as a school committee. What I might ask, if it's okay, is any of the 4 of us that have been on these committees could talk a little bit about what your committee has been working on and what you see coming up. And then what I would ask is offline, if all of our members would let me know which committees you'd like to serve on, and I'll kind of get us so that we have some fair representation, and if you could rank them and give me your first, second, and third choice. And then I'll get back to you with how that looks. But maybe for those that are either new, maybe we can have each of our members, so beginning with Megan, who you kind of already talked about it, but.
The desperate plea out there.
So, is there anything else you want to add about what you would do?
No, so governance leadership is basically exactly what it sounds like. We do a lot of work with Liz Levon from MASC. She's kind of our go-to for that. Setting policy, moving forward, it needs to be done on a more regular basis, so we don't have another year like this where we're doing it all at once. Yeah.
And there may be some conversations with Dr. Collins about other ways to engage around leadership. Obviously, we've had some turnover in leadership, so there may be some conversations that may happen at that committee. And then next is the Human Resources Committee. Lauren?
Yeah, human resources, the biggest thing we do time commitment wise is negotiate the contracts with the LEA. And there are 2 of those typically each is 3 years long, so we've just completed 2 years of negotiations, and this is the non-negotiation year coming up. So just saying, that's the committee you want to be on. But we actually had a great meeting with Jake this afternoon, talking about priorities for the upcoming year, and I think there's an awful lot that has been tabled through COVID, 2 years of negotiations and 3 years of leadership changes. So actually a lot to deal with in terms of making sure that we are supporting the teachers and staff who make the district run.
And I will just add, not as a correction, but just to know, we also have a 3rd unit, which is our custodian unit, which is our unit D. I think
They were negotiating with the agency this year.
yeah, so sometimes we do that together, and because it's our, but I don't want them to feel left out, because they're very, very important in how we run our buildings. So and then teaching, learning, and culture. I have been last year the chair of that committee. But David, do you want to talk a little bit about what we've done since I talked?
Sure. In a nutshell, teaching, learning, and culture addresses the needs of both students, faculty, and the community in general. And it's a very, very broad category. And you know, I feel really the simplest way to describe it is to think of those categories, is to think of those groups of people and then look at what's listed here in terms of what we cover. And it's a technology, it's social emotional learning, it's facilities, it's DEI, it's curriculum, it's instruction. And it addresses all of those issues from the perspective of all of those groups within the school community. How was that?
Yeah, great. And I will say also that at times we've had like a separate technology committee or a separate culture committee, and these certainly are not crafted in stone. It was sort of like, how have we been operating to have our subgroups of our school committee subcommittees working to try to support the initiatives of the district. Obviously, we as a committee are here to guide our superintendent and our leadership in their work, and so we act as a liaison on that. So if at some point we feel like we have a big conversation about technology, there might be a recommendation that we break that out as to a separate committee, and that certainly is welcomed from anyone who's interested in thinking about how we do things. So these are the committees we have. These are what we're looking for you to participate on. If you have some ideas about how it might work differently, we definitely entertain that and are open to that, because that's how these things should change, so we can get the day-to-day work done. In our subcommittees, they are subject to open meeting law and issues, but they are small working groups, and we do have the ability to try to get some of the behind the scenes work done in these committee levels. We have great partnerships at times with our building leaders and other people within the community who want to present to us about issues in various subcommittees that pertain. So it's meant to be a collaborative process. Okay, and then finance.
Yes,
Lauren, back to you.
back to me, I'm the last man standing from the finance subcommittee, take that for what you will. Finance is for the most part the budget subcommittee, which while it shows up once a year at town meeting, is pretty much a year-round process. So starting in the fall, there is sort of meeting at the strategic level about what are new priorities for this year, for the coming year. The building budgets are then developed in the fall, and then the finance committee starts reviewing those with superintendent and Melissa Polakowski, the assistant superintendent, probably in December. And then sort of in advance of the presentations to the full committee, there will have been review in the subcommittee. Subcommittee then works with the superintendent to take feedback coming from the full committee, from the town finance committee, select board, and make any proposed changes before the final version comes back to the full committee for a vote. And then I think looking ahead, there will likely be increasing focus on some of the longer term capital expenditures in school building related issues. We are in the process now for seeking state funding for major renovation or entirely new high school building, but that's also a process that can take a decade or more. So we have started to, and we'll need to do a lot more work thinking about what do we want to wait for that on versus what, if anything, do we need to start taking on ourselves sooner.
Thank you. And then actually, segueing from that, the school building, we think that all of our school building committee members retire. But I will, if it's okay with you, Megan, I'll call on Megan, because she has been speaking with Dr. Everwine about some important issues of our building.
Sure. So I haven't been a member of the subcommittee, so I'll do my best to kind of speak through it to the best of my knowledge. But I believe this was a relatively new subcommittee added.
Various times we do have buildings and facilities, so we look at it in terms of being able to get in there and talk about. There's sort of an overlap. There's finance, we have capital planning at the top, and then we have buildings, and sometimes they're part of capital improvement, and sometimes they're about thinking ahead, or sometimes they're about immediate issues that have to happen. So, you know, when even during COVID, the issue of how the buildings were going to function I wasn't on the committee at that point, but I'm guessing that there was some real participation about how to handle buildings when you have to deal with
Sure.
environments.
And
But we get to figure that how we want, you know?
Another, yeah, and I think, I believe, I don't know if we operate these as the same thing, but once we are in the state process, you also have to have a formal committee that is sort of representing the town, which involves not just school committee representatives, but a whole select board, town manager, other stakeholders. And so I think whoever has been on the school building committee has also essentially been the school committee's participants in that process. And I believe, well, Bob Bond has particularly played a role in that, and from whatever stakeholder role he formally advertised going forward, has offered to continue participating in that process.
Particularly giving his institutional knowledge of what's happened and where we are now, which is.
So coming up in a couple of weeks, so professionally, I am an occupational safety and health consultant, AKA OSHA, which no one's ever happy to see me. So, so I have offered, volunteered my time in a couple of weeks to do some audits of both buildings. We'll be meeting with the lead custodian and the principal of each building. So, that being said, I have a feeling I'm probably going to be leaning towards subcommittee, but we'll see.
And thank you, Megan, because I really do appreciate your expertise on that. It's come up in a couple of different ways, and we, you know, our buildings. There are some people who remember when they were new, but including me, or been newly renovated, but they're used and they're used to a great degree and they're well cared for, but there are some things that we're facing. And we need to really have a lot of information and share that information widely with our community as we think about what that looks like for meeting the present and future needs of our students. So it's always a challenge because nothing's cheap, right? Okay, so if you just let me know, that would be great, and we'll get our committees up and running. And then the subcommittees themselves will typically choose the chair. So, or you know, maybe the person who's acted in that role before, or you can volunteer to be the chair, and we'll work through it. And it's really a good process and a chance to really dig in. Okay, so
Can we do this tonight? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Could we assign subcommittee
I
tonight?
thought people would just email me. Is that okay? And give you your first, second, third, and then we'll just kind of see if there's, I have a feeling it's gonna kind of align. Some people already did their homework. And that's just, that'd be great, so just let me know. And our next, and then after everyone's asked to have a few minutes to speak before we close out, and then we will be seeking to adjourn to an executive session. So I will pass it to you.
I don't think we need executive session. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think just as a quick update from
Okay.
HR, we had a final meeting with the LEA to conclude the Unit C contract, and it was all wrapped up very satisfactorily to all sides. In line with what we'd shared previously with the old full committee. Traditionally, the LEA ratifies first, and so they will ratify the final version. I believe it means June 1st or June first week of June. And so we would then bring that back for this committee to ratify at our meeting, which I believe is June 12th.
And I will say, in the meantime, we can have a chance to share the contract that is being reviewed without any of you, without all of you, and anybody that wants to have questions, you can reach out to Warren or any of us on the HR committee if you want to, but Warren and Bob primarily led the minute negotiations. So if you have questions before we ratify, so feel like you're comfortable with it, certainly reach out and ask those questions. So we'll get that to everybody before then.
Yes, they're just
Finishing
the
up
process of
changes.
updating all the cross references to the names of articles that have changed is just about done, and then I'll send it around.
Yeah, he was, Alex Lamalia was the
And we're
representative
about
from the.
negotiations years ago. Yeah,
Still doing his thing. Okay, so I'll pass to you.
Yeah, sure. So thank you. I just wanted to, I guess the most important part of the meeting is just to remind everyone that at the next meeting, you'll have your new superintendent sitting in front of you, Dr. Bill Collins. So I'm really excited for you all, excited for Dr. Collins, and I know it's been long awaited and anticipated, and the moment is almost here. Yay. He will be joining the district on June 1st. And he and I will spend 2 days together on overlap on that Thursday and Friday. We're putting together a schedule. Make sure he has a chance, we have a chance to talk together. I've got plenty of transition documents. He has a chance to loop around the school and interact with some folks and get a tour and then I think it's really exciting that he's going to be here for the end of the year, I think, to really interact with folks as you celebrate, have gatherings, have graduation, step up ceremonies, and I think it'll be really a fantastic opportunity to get to meet him, get to know him, and give him a chance to, begin to integrate with the community. So really excited for you all. I continue to be available, but we'll stay out of the way, I promise you that. Unless asked. But if there are things that I can support, and I've made this very clear with Bill, I'm happy to be available. Not like I am going anywhere too far away. And I'll continue the work that I've been fortunate to do in the county and trying to improve holistically, outcomes and opportunities and quality and access for kids across Berkshire County in light of all the challenges that we face in our region around as pertain to shrinking enrollment and challenging resource situations. And so I'm very optimistic. But I wanted to make sure that I just communicated tonight that just a heartfelt thank you for the last 6 months. It's been just really a pleasure to be with you all. I'm often asked, if you seem like you're enjoying the job there at Lenox, people with sort of a public question. And they say why, and my response is very consistent. It's the people. I've just really enjoyed working with you all, the people in this district, getting to know you, and I've really found you all to be just incredibly committed and patient and flexible with me and with us as we navigate. I think what we want for this community, which is just an exceptional school system that reflects the aspirations of this community. And I do believe you have it. It doesn't mean that you have lots of work to do like any district, but you have the foundation of really an incredible thing happening here. And I'm really pleased to say that. We've accomplished a lot. 6 months is kind of crazy. All the things that we've gone through, and I'm not going to go through a laundry list because it looks like I would be patting myself on the back. And I just want to be clear that nothing that has been accomplished in the last 6 months has been accomplished alone. It's been with this amazing team that we have and with this amazing team here around the table. I have to really thank the admin team. They're just a great group, and I've enjoyed the both formal and informal interactions we've had in meetings and in the mornings and by phone and email and everything in between. Amy, Melissa, Sue, Jeremiah, Brenda, Brian, Dave, Tim, Shannon, and Randy are the core of this admin team, and just want to call them out by name because they're just a tremendous group and you're fortunate to have them. So walking into, I think, a very strong situation with this admin team. Also want to thank the school committee. I can't say it as well as Christine said at the last meeting about what it means to be in this field. And so I won't even try, but I want to thank Bob Vaughn, who's counseled me from the very beginning and just been a partner. Veronica, Oren, I think we sat on a bench outside of Lenox Coffee sometime when you convinced me this was the right thing to do. So thanks for that. It was a great decision and I appreciate that. Megan, Bob, Dave, the conversations we've had out in the parking lot, I appreciate that. Hutchinson, great to have you here to bring students back to the table after some absence, and we really appreciate you and Adeline being here to represent the student voice, and even for the opportunity. I'm glad that you have the strength and the courage to reach out to the superintendent and say, I don't agree with you on something, and call me on that. So that's good. Don't stop that, continue that. That's really what we want in our student body. Welcome the incoming members. You're fortunate to be here, I can tell you that, and it's great work. I have to call it the LEA, the LEA is an excellent partner. I've been in a few districts and that's not always the case. Mary Cherry is an exceptional individual and we work incredibly closely on some sticky situations. I can't just say I'm not positive about Mary I think Mary actually was the person who initially approached me at a restaurant about, what do you think? And so she gets the formal credit or an ink the deal, but I also wanna welcome Sarah, who's gonna be the new president. It's great that you have a positive relationship with the LEA. It makes a big difference in how you operate and how successful the district is. Amazing community partners. I just have to call them out. Your town manager, Chris Ketchen, is right across the hall. We interact every single day. Our two chiefs, the O'Briens, who've been great partners. Our LYA, our community partners, our scholarship, just a great folks here. I have to call our faculty and staff. They're the people who actually get the work done every day. We can sit around this table. They're the folks who show up at 7 in the morning, face classfuls of kids, drive buses, ensure the safety and the progress of our kids, and they really get the credit for the great work that's happening here. And it's been really a pleasure to work with them all. To the parents and caregivers, I've heard from plenty of you, both positive and critical in a positive way. I appreciate that. To the students, you really do inspire us. And so thanks for that. I will apologize, I didn't get to know you better. I'd say if there was one place that I probably didn't have the time in a 3-day-a-week gig, was the time really to interact on the ground floor of the school. I missed that. But I do want to just make sure you know that we're all proud of you, and you are what gets us up in the morning. I want to thank the citizens of the town of Lenox for their ongoing support. It's important that I thank the two entities that gave me up, provided me the time to do this work, Berk 12 and my board. We had a meeting on Saturday, and it was great to sort of give them a progress update. And also the Regional School District Planning Board, South County group that I am leading that project on the merger, potential merger between Southern Berkshire and Berkshire Hills. I appreciate the fact that folks were very flexible around recognizing the juggling act that was the last 6 months. Gotta thank my wife and my dogs. Maybe my dogs miss me more than my wife, but I do thank her for her support. She puts up a lot, and I appreciate that. You all have a really strong mission here, and that's to provide a superior education by developing each student's unique talents, interests, and goals. And I would say continue to reflect that, work on that, and strive for that in everything that you do. I'm really grateful again for the opportunity, and I completely look forward to watching Lenox Public Schools continue to thrive. And as needed, I wish you all the best and available. So, but anyways, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you.
If you won't pat yourself on the back, I will. I think it's almost hard to remember what our situation was as a committee, for instance, in October and November. We had no superintendent, we had no high school principal. Typically, we had begun as a substitute, but the prognosis was not good. And I started texting Jake. Well, for personal reasons, he was inaccessible and not in a position to be texting, but he started getting texts anyway and calls. And I think we were actually outside of Jamie's because there was no seating available at Lenox Coffee that afternoon. And he just sat there for probably a good 90 minutes and let me pitch him and insist that he had to come do this. When he didn't, I'm a very persuasive person in a lot of situations, but I had no leverage nor anything but to play on his incredible integrity and commitment to education in this county, and made a lot of promises that I couldn't back up. But apparently the district has done okay in that regard, and it's an incredible testament to Jake that he took this on when he already had essentially 2 full-time jobs, as far as I could tell, and has given it, I think, more than we had any reasonable right to expect and or even hope for. And I know from his team, the leadership that he's provided them and the partnership has been extraordinary from their perspective as well. And we are now here with a high school principal, with a superintendent coming in and a new committee and I think a steady ship. And that is mostly a testament to what you've given us. So I can't express my appreciation enough, and we were truly fortunate to have you. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're very kind. Thank you.
Just a couple words. I sent Jake a very nice email back in March, and just, I won't embarrass you and share the whole thing, but again, you've continued to impress me from day one, and you've taught me a lot as a new-ish school committee member, and I really am thankful for that. You're always a great sounding board, which I also appreciate. And I think, you were exactly what we needed during that time, like Warren said, I can't even really imagine or remember that time, which is probably for the best. But you transitioned so smoothly into this interim role, and from your budget presentations and you name it, everything has been immaculate. So I feel very, very fortunate that you've been on board for, it feels like longer than 6 months, right?
It does.
But thank you very much. We're very lucky
You're
to
welcome.
have you.
Thanks, man.
And then the risk of getting a reputation for me is going way over, which although they could go really late, folks, so be prepared for that. I also want to share my thanks, and just to not duplicate too much, I want to say, I think that your perspective in a larger position, having been in so many different roles in leadership, including cultivating leaders across the district, and also thinking about ways that we can do the work we need to do as a very small district while collaborating with others, really have appreciated. And I really am optimistic and hopeful that we'll continue with other types of communications around partnerships and around how we think strategically for our community, and being able to get your opinions also in selecting our leadership team as we move forward. Your input around those selections has been also incredibly helpful, because we do recognize, as much as we are sitting here talking about how far we've come, there's a lot of people that are still struggling in our community, and I still want to end on a high note, and I appreciate how much you've made, really had some really robust conversations and advice and communication about that. It is still our job to utilize our new leadership and work together to ensure that all students are seen and heard and valued and respected. And I know that's what many people in our community want, but when others are violating that, it's our job to make sure that we come together and ensure that protection and that support. And so I thank you for that, because I think your vision in being in various districts as well as in college level leadership helps to give us some perspective, some advice, some connections about what to do and how to move forward. And I appreciate that you're also not like closing the door solidly behind us. And I'll finally say thank you again to Amy. You said it, but to Amy and Melissa and Susan in the office. They each have, I don't want to, we've appreciated so much Amy's support also as having worked with many superintendents, and therefore her institutional knowledge and her effort and her extreme dedication to getting us, as well as Melissa's, to getting us through transitions. I really can't thank you enough. We will be, hopefully for the community, thinking about planning some opportunities for all different community stakeholders to meet Dr. Collins and get to know him, including from this committee. We're just going to think a little bit about some social opportunities that would give every stakeholder, the community members, the opportunity to meet him and get to know him, and to let them know what you hope is priorities for our district. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. That's great.
So let me say, from the first meeting, I felt as though a great weight had been lifted here, and just we were in very good hands going forward.
Thank you. Well, we had an excellent conversation in my kitchen.
Well, okay, I misread it.
You did it. I thought it was fantastic.
I showed up at Jake's, his first email said, come by and meet me, so we set up a time, I showed up at his house. So. I've been wondering.
No, driveway. I'm like, okay.
It's the first.
This might be the time for a motion to adjourn.
I move the adjourn.
All those in favor? Thank you all. Thanks for being here. Thanks for